Welcome, everybody. Bienvenidos a todos. Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Abelardo de la Peña Jr. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications with La Plaza de Cultura y Artes. Welcome you to tonight's En Casa con la Plaza. En Casa con la Plaza is La Plaza's virtual programming where we bring the best of our history, art, and culture and more from our home to yours. Tonight we have a very special program brought to you by Kaiser Permanente and PepsiCo. Thank you so much to our sponsors. If you joined us on Facebook, please use the comment section, ask questions, make comments, let us know where you're viewing from, share it with your friends. Those of you that have joined us on Zoom, use the chat feature and the Q&A feature. We will be taking questions, we'll be saving them for later. But please, we welcome your comments and questions. Before we get started, just letting you know that La Plaza de Cultura y Artes has reopened. We're open from Thursdays through Sundays from noon to 4 p.m. Go to our website, LAPCA, to make reservations. Or if you could take a chance and come in to the standby line. If we haven't reached maximum capacity, you might be able to sneak in. We've also opened our exhibition, Only Light Can Do That, a neon art installation by Patrick Martinez. You don't even have to go inside the exhibit to enjoy this. It's neon art, which is on 35 of our windows facing Main Street, and it is beautiful day or night. Our public programming begins in May with May 30th, in fact, this next Sunday, with Molcajete Dominguero, our Latino Tianguis, and our historic Paseo Walkway. And just a little bit of great news here, the LA Arts Recovery Fund, initiated by the J. Paul Getty Trust and administered by the California Community Foundation, announced a recent grant to La Plaza de Cultura y Artes to enable us to continue to expand our programming, exhibition, and educational initiatives, and also to continue this program in Casa con la Plaza. All right, before we bring on our guest, let me tell you a little bit about her. She's an Emmy award-winning broadcast journalist, columnist, and author who's appeared on NBC, CBS, PBS, and cable TV stations all over Southern California, in California, and nationally. She is the author of the best-selling award-winning book of Latino virtues called It's All in the Frijoles, published by Simon and Schuster, a former political wife, mother, and honored community leader. In mid-December of last year, we had our guest on En Casa discussing the digital audio release of her groundbreaking book, where she shared inspiration, faith, and spirituality inherent in our culture. Now, before I bring her on, we're gonna share the screen here to just show a little bit of her career prior to her present career as an author and inspirational speaker. So here goes.
I'm not hearing anything.
Okay, I'm stopping the share here because I'm hearing reports that you can't hear. And my apologies for that. I didn't click a button on the Zoom. So I'm gonna go ahead and just take up from where we started here. Okay, so please forgive me. This often happens because hey, that's what happens. So here we go.
The replacement child, but that's what it was. Well, it's an amazing book because you give us an insider's look at history through 3 administrations, starting with President Carter and then going through Reagan and Bush. And you began your career at CBS in 1972 as one of the affirmative action babies.
True enough.
And
True
your
enough.
break was the Watergate burglary, which was considered a third-rate burglary.
That's why they gave it to me. I was the young, new kid. Not that young, actually, but I was the newest kid. And they said, oh, let her have it. It's not that significant a story. It became a big story. And they assigned Daniel Shore I stayed on as number 2. So it was a break.
You're a feminist, but you weren't active in the women's movement at that time. Why is that?
Well, a couple of reasons. One was it was a political movement, and I was a reporter, and I just felt I couldn't be.
All right. Well, that was just a short snippet of a Life and Times interview with Leslie Stahl, the great Leslie Stahl of 60 Minutes. And with that, I'd like to bring up and introduce you to Yolanda Nava. Please join us, Yolanda.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you, Abelardo, and that's a wonderful interview with Leslie Stahl. It goes back many, many years, and a lot of remembrances of the early days when women were first stepping into broadcasting. As you know, I was the first woman of Mexican heritage to appear in a network affiliate in Los Angeles at KNBC. And so that's why La Plaza included me in their media pioneers, and I'm not that old, Abelardo, and I turned the clock back, a few years ago, 15 years. So I'm not owning my 50 años looking atrás.
No, well, thank you so much. No, your career has spanned from local news to national news and even international, interviewing people like Leslie Stahl. You in this reel of clips that you could find on your YouTube page, including Isabel Allende and so many others. And but we're not gonna talk about that today. What we're gonna really recount is your journey, which you tell so beautifully in a book that was just recently published called Through the Dark. So just give us a little preamble of what the book is about, and then we'll go more into detail on what's inside the book.
Well, the book is about the experience of suddenly losing sight, waking up one morning really and being blind in both eyes. That happened over a matter of just a couple of weeks. And all the changes and shifts I had to go through during that period of time. It was traumatic. It was a cataclysmic, life-changing event, not dissimilar to what we've gone through in these past, year, more than almost a year and a half with the COVID-19 pandemic, where so many people have been affected by catastrophic changes, life changes. Many people have died. Many people have been very ill. I mean, everything has kind of gone up topsy-turvy. Well, that's what it felt like. I went through a divorce. I was no longer was employed. I was homeless briefly. And it was just one of those very difficult times when you feel like the rug has been pulled out from under you and everything goes flying in the air. And so that was the beginning of it. And it was very chaotic and very difficult and challenging. But I tuned in last night to the program with Miguel Santana and Supervisor Gloria Molina, and I was on the board at that time, early on, when I lost my sight. And I must tell you, and I want to thank La Plaza and Supervisor Molina and the other board members and the staff, because it was my engagement with La Plaza that kept me on point, on target, on purpose, because I wanted to continue to contribute. I did fly in and out of those board meetings, and I did attend and participate and make calls and raise money and do all those things, and look at strategy for the La Plaza. So that was a very important part, and I write about that in the book in the early chapters about how I was able to continue moving forward. But it was a very difficult, very chaotic, very painful, dark period of my life initially.
Oh, I'm sure it was, and we appreciate all that you've done for La Plaza. The program that Yolanda is speaking about is an En Casa session that we had just last night with former supervisor Gloria Molina and Miguel Santana, both of them. Gloria Molina, of course, the founder, the instigator, the person who really brought people together to create La Plaza de Cultura y Artes after much difficulty, and Miguel Santana, who was serving as honor staff as a chief deputy, who really on the ground doing the nuts and bolts of setting up the organization, the the program, the rehabilitation of the building. And all this is because we're celebrating our 10th anniversary, believe it or not. We opened doors on April 16th of 2011. And so we're celebrating all this year, talking to the people that were key, and that includes Yolanda Nava. Now, La Plaza does enter a lot in the book. You do talk about the meetings that you attended, and right now you spoke of how instrumental it was to really get you back involved. But before we start with that, I'm just gonna, the name of the book again is Through the Darkness, and here's what a couple of people that had previews of the book, and hopefully all of you will be able to get the book soon. Here's what Denise Chavez, founder of Libros para el Viaje, and the owner of Casa Camina Real Bookstore in Las Cruces, and author herself of a couple books, says. Through the Dark by Yolanda Nava is a book that embodies sabiduría, not only wisdom, but knowing and understanding. It is a tour de force memoir of a heartfelt soul journey. Both moving and compelling, the book calls upon the ancestors and family, validates culture, grace, and love, and embodies the best of who we are, spirits who inhabit this miracle called life. Thank you, Comadre Yolanda, for your deep work. A blessing it is. Your words will enlighten, transform, and heal many. Let me ask you, Yolanda, how did the act of coming up with the concept for the book and writing it, how did it heal you, if it did at all?
Well, I think anytime you write a book, it's an inner process that is at work. And I think really creative work comes through us. That was the case with Frijoles. In this case, I had the intention right away, within 6 months of coming home from the hospital, I began writing the book longhand in spiral notebooks. And it took a volunteer to help read it to me, and then I would say, correct this, correct that, and she would mark it in red, and then she would read me the corrections, and I would type the information material into the chapters, and then I had to work with that. And it's taken, about 10 years to go from start to finish, and the book is very different now than it was when it started. But I knew this was going to be an experience. And like all things, I asked myself in the very beginning, why blindness? To what am I blind? And asking myself those questions then unfolded the idea of writing a book, because I knew that my experience would in some way be able to help other people. And actually in writing the book, it was also very cathartic for me, because I had to look at it all very differently. And I'm very honest in the book. I mean, I say, I made mistakes. I should have done things that I knew I should intuitively, that would have prevented a lot of the chaos that happened. But I didn't pay attention. And I think I'm trying to share all these things because it's important that we do pay attention, and that we really see what's going on, and when that our inner self tells us something, follow it. Because it's trying to tell you something, and it's your higher self that's coming through, trying to give you direction and guidance, and really move you forward in a constructive and positive way.
What you speak of how you really started the book when this whole journey began with the blindness, and the book itself is relatively short with 12 chapters altogether. And in chronological order. Now you have as chapter 1, Life Falls Apart, which is a pretty powerful statement. Could you just describe a little bit of the contents of chapter 1?
Well, I like I say, I lost sight in one eye one day. I got very sick, and I lost sight of one eye. But that was fine. I kind of roll with the punches on the low, though. And I said, oh, well, okay, I can't see out of one eye, but I can see I could read a book and a magazine. I could look out the window and see my beautiful plants and the trees and the Sangre de Cristo Mountains in the distance, and, the leafy green leaves. And I could see, one eye. Let me tell you, one eye is one eye. And then 3.5 weeks later, I woke up and I couldn't see at all. I was in a marriage that was very difficult, and it was extremely dark in that whole relationship and period. And so I unfold that. I look at that, looking back and moving through it. And so I think that that chapter is very helpful to people because we need to really pay attention. And I did a journaling process that I really has helped me be a writer and a journalist and everything else, in which you do dialogue, and you learn through the dialogue how to move through whatever you're experiencing at the time. And you just keep going. It was that chapter, I mean, was those chapters, the early chapters are the ones that unfold a lot of the difficulty. And again, attending those meetings in La Plaza, and for a while we were meeting once a month. I mean, I think for a year and a half we were meeting once a month. So that was very instrumental in having to plan trips. And I was living in New Mexico at the time, and then I was also in a training program out of state, and I would fly in from there. And it kept me in a state of normalcy at a time which was not normal for me, because I was having difficulty adjusting to not being able to see, and the also the issues that were going on in the marriage that was very difficult, and which I ended within months of coming out of the hospital.
No, you speak very, very candidly about the state of your marriage with your ex-husband, and sometimes I'm sure it was difficult for you to recount it, to lay on paper or in type the conversations that you would have, the coldness that you felt, and what got you through that?
Knowing I was going to get out of it. I was doing a lot of affirmative prayer during that whole period, and I knew right away. My son actually helped me when I was in the hospital, and he asked me, "What are you going to do about this marriage?" And I regret that I didn't, talk to you more about it. When you told me that you weren't happy, a couple of years earlier, and so I knew I was going to get a divorce. And it was the worst possible time to do something like that, but I had to do it because it would have killed me if I'd stayed there. And so, you have to make difficult choices, and then you have to take action. And so I knew I was going to take action. I had to go through that horrible process just as I was recovering, and I was still quite weak and ill. I mean, I was just out of the hospital, and a couple of months later I filed. But I had some wonderful experiences as well. And I think it's that balance of, the wonderful and the devastating, and that seems to bounce back and forth. And I think we're learning that now in the period process that we've been going through in the last, through this pandemic, is that we can have a beautiful day and we can have a difficult day, and we might have a wonderful day and somebody else is having a difficult day, and hundreds of thousands of people have been affected. So we can't always expect life is going to be a bowl of cherries. And I think my perspective, I love to reference that film, because life is really not a bowl of cherries. It's more like a box of chocolates. You don't know what you're going to get. And so how do we look at each situation, and how do we go through each situation, good or bad, as gracefully as possible?
And one in chapter 4, you kind of open up about how miracles do happen, and you speak about the physician that you saw, the first physician that you saw. So tell us about that meeting, and what made you feel that a miracle was taking place?
Well, there were many miracles when I was in the hospital. And miracles are something that happen. These are not, miracles are really everyday occurrences, but, we're told that they're unusual and out of order, and, and yet they are miraculous when we're in those situations. I did a lot of prayer when I was in the hospital. I do spiritually affirmative prayer, what's called spiritual mind treatment. And I self-treated while I was in the hospital. And when I had conversations later with my physician, Dr. Lawrence Pirro, he told me, I said, well, how did I appear to you when you first met me in the hospital? And he said, well, you were out of body. And then he said more, but I'm going to nutshell it. He said, you were out of body. It was as if you were going to go to the light. You were just going to go. You were in your spiritual presence. But you were you, Yolanda. We had fabulous, wonderful conversations when I saw you every night at the hospital. So I had to think about what that was, what that meant, being in your spiritual presence. And that started a whole series of conversations. Of course, this went on many, many, many years later. And but I put it in the book to present that idea that a medical doctor was talking about spiritual presence. And part of that, also during that period of time with the miraculous, my housekeeper Socorro came in to tell me one day when she was cleaning the house, and she said, Senora, she said, there's an image of the Virgen de Guadalupe on the floor of your bedroom that wasn't there the last time I cleaned. And so I got down and she showed me where it was, and then I called a friend and had her come over and describe it to me. And in fact, it was an image of the Virgen de Guadalupe that felt like it had been carved on the floor. It felt like a penknife had carved it. So that is a miraculous encounter. And I would experience the Virgen de Guadalupe in my mind's eye. She would pop into different quadrants of my mind's eye, large, small, and I felt her presence. I'm not Catholic, but I love the Virgen de Guadalupe. And I have a beautiful carved image of her that I've had in my dining room for decades. And I look at her as a symbol of love, compassion, and empowerment. If God had a face, she would be the feminine face of God. But of course, God doesn't have a face except the angels that we happen to experience and other human beings that we encounter throughout life. But it was a time of miraculous things, wonderful passages. That's a great chapter of Yolanda. I really love that chapter, Angels and Omens. And there's just a lot of unusual, interesting, miraculous, amazing happenings that go on in that chapter.
Oh, and this was right at about the same time that you were finalizing the legal issues with the divorce and returning home from the hospital while he was still there. So no, with this really difficult part of the journey, you in turn are witnessing and embodying all these omens, the Virgen de Guadalupe. And also, angels in human form, like you say, Socorro, and so many other friends that came to really assist you during these times.
Life is like that, and one of the things that I have discovered and I really appreciate in my life now, and this is now many years later, is the fact that I am blessed. And people, sometimes feel very sorry for me. They, tend to, feel a sense of pity. I said, please don't. I said, a big blind isn't the worst thing in the world. I feel very blessed because I have so many angels that have supported me and guided me and buoyed me up, moved me forward, that I really do feel truly blessed. And that is a miraculous thing in and of itself, to be able to come from one place that was so difficult and move into the other. The one thing I want to say quickly is that bad marriage and the divorce that I referred to was my third husband, not my children's father, just so those of you that know my children as father. It was not that marriage that we're referring to in this. It was a much more recent marriage. But the miraculous is present in our lives to the extent that we seek to get in touch with our more spiritual, inner, intuitive selves. And so I put a lot of comments about the transitions that we can go through in our life during these very difficult times. And they're good and they're difficult, but there's always some force that I felt that was moving me through this process. That's why I think that the title is so important. The idea of moving through these things, and that's what we have to do. We move through the pandemic, we move through a crisis, we move through a loss, the passing of a loved one. We have to move through it and not get stuck in it.
Sure, and I prior to this journey that you're taking in your life work and your career, there was a lot of movement in going from one place to another. And what's really for me incredible is even with this condition this life-changing occurrence that happened, you still kept moving. as you described, you'd go back and forth to from your hometown to here in LA for La Plaza meetings, but you also went to Mexico to meet with one of your other angels in human form. Could you tell us about that?
Well, I went to Mexico. It's been what? It was about 3 years ago. I have family there in DF, and I had planned to go, and I was going to stay with my cousins, which I stay with one cousin usually, and I've been doing that over the last several decades. She has a great big king bed, and I go stay with her, and she has staff, and it's very lovely. She's older now. She's what, 93? She's my mother's first cousin, and so she's my second cousin. But I just adore her, and she has two sisters, and I was able to visit with two of them when I went on that last trip, and with their daughters. They have two daughters each. And so that was really a lovely reunion. I'm blind, and nobody could go with me. And so I planned to go myself, and I called a new friend that I met during the Salt of the Earth celebration in 2014 at the State University of New Mexico. And I call her, and I'm thinking that she's living at the beach on the Pacific coast, north of Huatulco. And she says, "No, Yolanda, I live in Oaxaca." She said, "My mother has the home at the beach. Why don't you come to Oaxaca?" I said, "Where is Oaxaca?" I knew it was in the south, but I didn't know how to get there. So she planned my whole itinerary, how to get there, what airplane to take. She would meet me at the airport. She'd pick me up. We'd go to her house. So we spent a week in Oaxaca with her 10-year-old daughter, and another friend came, and we drove across the mountains and through beautiful, beautiful country that they were describing to me, and ended up at the beach. And we stayed with a fisherman's family, very humble people. We slept in hammocks. I slept in a hammock for 2 nights. It was wonderful. And we had the experiences there, and then adventures driving up, the coast to her mother's home. It was like an Airbnb. And that was another experience. And then she put me on a plane to go from Huatulco, and I fly back to Mexico City, spent another couple of days there. And I feel very comfortable in Mexico City because I've been going there for decades. I love my cousins, and I want to keep that Mexican connection. And so I like to go to the museums and, go to the restaurants and, just take in the flavor and the color and the people and the language. And I was so well taken care of in the hotel where I stayed. One of the fellows that worked there would escort me to breakfast every morning, and then he asked permission for the manager to take me on a walk my last day, and he walked me all around the area around the hotel, and we went into the church of the Virgen de Guadalupe. We went into the major cathedral there in the city, and it's just magical experiences. I could have written a whole book about that, that journey. And it was also a healing journey too. I saw a curandera when I was there, and that was very empowering and powerful. So there, I've traveled there. I've traveled during with the blindness. I traveled to Carmel Valley with a girlfriend that I've known since the Comisión Femenil back at when we were in our 20s, and we went to a Buddhist retreat at the Tasahara Mountains and Retreat Center in Carmel Valley. And that's a wonderful chapter. It was like being at an ancient Japanese village, and I write it as such. And it was just a beautiful experience. And we did daily, I worked in the kitchen 3 days, and we were chopping. We did the guest practice program. And I drew no blood. I was working with a big meat cleaver and all that. We did radish things, and we did lamachta cucumber sticks. So that was an adventure. And then I went to Colombia with a friend whose daughter was cultural affairs attaché for the U.S. Embassy there. And that was a marvelous experience. Went out dancing and met the consul from Cuba to Colombia. And that was an adventure. I don't really write about that, but that wasn't it. I've had so many wonderful adventures, as I have all my life. I meet wonderful people, and people share their, lives and time with me. And so who would think, that I would go out of the country 3 times blind?
Well, a lot of it, I'm sure, is because of your nature, your inquisitive nature, your curiosity, your thirst for adventure. But you'd also had to learn some new skills, and you have a chapter called Boot Camp, in which you describe, what it what it meant, or how you went through the process of learning new skills that would help you navigate in this new world that you were living in.
Well, it's very essential that people do that. And I would recommend to people who are losing sight, retinitis pigmentosa, macular degeneration, many of the things which don't necessarily cause blindness, but do cause severe sight impairment, that they get training. And the Braille Institute and other organizations do have training programs. I was not at the Braille Institute, I must say. I was in a program that was really more like boot camp, and it was very difficult. And yet, I learned how to use the cane for mobility purposes, the long white cane, and also how to, learn how to schedule yourself to get on a bus, to, get on a train, to travel from point A to point B. And, so they're good skills. Home management, so you know how to cook blind. And that was a challenge because we were in a huge kitchen with both gas and electric stoves. We had an electric stove in the apartment. I didn't know how to cook on an electric stove. I use and prefer gas. And so I had to relearn that. But we learned how to make thin crust pizza and chicken parmesan, which I'd never made, and different dishes that I would not make, and then I would adapt for my own purposes. So it was interesting to learn how to cook and take care of yourself. It was really something, because when I got back home from that program, I cooked myself costillas in the oven. And my oven wasn't anything I could see. It wasn't anything that I knew where the degrees were. I just remembered from physically doing it all those years living in that home where the 375 was, and I put the ribs in, I seasoned them, and I put the ribs in there. And I was so proud of myself when I cooked those. So we learned, to do that at the training program. And there was also learning Braille. I learned it, but I threw it away as soon as I left the program, 9 months later, because I'm a paperless society. I'm committed to that. And I work on a computer, and everything is in the computer. And there are other ways than Braille. It was very essential, in the century in the 1800s when it was discovered. But today, everything is digital, and you could, I use an audio screen reader. That's how I've written through the dark, blind. And there are many other technological advances that we can now use. So I gave up the Braille very quickly, but it was an adventure.
Oh, no, you're still, you're on Instagram, you're on Facebook. You're as connected as anybody else I know.
Well, let me tell you a secret. I have a very special social media person, Raymond Del Barrio, and he came through a friend who was an angel in my life, and he is an angel in my life, and he's the one that has set all this up, and it's really been marvelous, and it's really great to have help and have somebody that you can bounce ideas off of and then get them implemented, because I don't like dealing with technology. I don't want to spend my time doing that. And so it's nice to have help and to, be able to get out into the world. This book is an important book. It's a very healing book. It's a very inspiring book, and it has a lot of information, and it's not telling, it's really showing, because I'm taking you through, the reader, through my process in the hopes that you'll get it and perhaps, learn a thing or two that you could apply to your own life to move through your own personal life challenges and trauma, and how important it is to be able to release the old and move into the present and the new. And we can create the lives that we want through our process of thinking, our process of affirmation, spiritual affirmation, our process of intention, in order to create that which we want. We often get stuck in the negativity and what we don't want, so we're generating more energy for all of that, instead of creating the life that we want really systematically in the process of our thinking and our daily affirmations and prayer, hopefully by meditating. And all of these things are things that I learned or relearned in this process of losing sight. And one of the most important things was I needed a spiritual practice. And so I began meditating. And that's been a challenge. You know, I'm not a person that likes to sit, and I could never sit on one of those Buddhist pillows and, you know, sit there for hours at a time cross-legged. That's not me. But what I did learn is that there are different styles of spiritual practice. And there is a style of walking meditation that Thich Nhat Hanh teaches. And so there are more ways than one. We don't have to sit piously in a pew. We can move. We can do yoga. I love yoga, and I do yoga, you know, almost every day. I do it several times a week, and I walk every day for exercise. This afternoon, I went over to the pool and I did water ballet exercises that I learned in, you know, in a class in the pool. And I came back and took a shower and, you know, came on the Zoom. So we have to move. And I think if anything, you know, anybody learns anything from me is move your body, because if you don't, you won't be able to.
You're exactly correct. But within all the, you're an energetic person, intellectually curious, I mean, friendly, of course, to be able to get to meet with people, to get to have them trust you, you know, in your life as a journalist, to have them tell you stories, to tell you truths. Now, you have one chapter which describes that acceptance arrives. It seems like you were so many things going on in your life at the time, the marriage, the blindness, trying to navigate through this world. How did that happen when the acceptance of your situation arrived?
What you realize is that when what you resist persists. And I never understood what that meant until I went through it. And that resistance was when I was at the what I call boot camp. It was so grim. It was totally antithetical to who I am, the philosophy there. And but I was in resistance, and I was in agony over it. I was torn away from my home, and I was, you know, it was a very, very difficult period of time. But I was in resistance, and all of a sudden, you know, I realized you can't be in resistance. You must release that. And the way I tell that story, I think, is very interesting, you know, about the dream and everything else that went on in that chapter. But one can learn not to resist what's going on. And a lot of people have had and continue to have difficulty with what's going on with the COVID, because they're thinking that they've lost freedom, and that, you know, this is just something so terrible, and that they can't live their lives normally. Well, what's normal? Normal changes. I now can't see that. For me now is my new normal. And so the resistance is very important to release. I hope if, you know, read the book and really work with me on that, and experience what I was experiencing and why I was experiencing it, because we have to free ourselves of resistance. We have to move through. We have to take action. But the way to get out of resistance is to take the action and take the steps to break out of that pattern of just anchoring down and saying, I don't want to do this. And so that was a real turnaround for me to accept what I had to do what I had to do to keep having an active life, which I've chosen to do. And I've had a great, 11 years now. And I'm going strong, and I've already started my next book. And I just had this vitality and this sense of purpose, which I think is really essential. And if you are feeling upset and down and all the rest of it, go volunteer and help somebody else. Because in the process of helping somebody else, you develop a sense of purpose, and you develop a sense of a new kind of sharing and compassion, because you get out of your own stuff. You get rid of this little petty ego that we have, and you move into a larger space where you're about service and you're about contribution, and you're really seeking to contribute and trying to make the world a better place. And if you're on purpose, you're not going to have time to be upset or angry. You're going to be on purpose. And that's how I got through the whole COVID thing. I never felt any discomfort. I didn't run out of toilet paper. I had no sense of lack. I got everything I needed. It was a mindset. It was a mindset that we need to get ourselves into to adapt and to move forward and through whatever situation we're going through.
Well, one of the pivotal chapters and really just very interesting to me was Abadania, I think I pronounced it right, and John of God, a travel to Brasilia. Could you tell us about that, just briefly? We don't want to give too much away.
No.
We do.
That was Grace, my friend, a new friend. Again, what is needed comes. And I had wanted to go see John of God. This is back in 2019, 18.
It was 2017.
17. And I had heard about him from a mentor of mine, and our center actually went the year before I went. And my mentor mentioned to me, you ought to do this. And I didn't have the money, and I was really working on the book, and I didn't want to break away because I didn't feel I could do that. I wanted to, keep working on the book. That was my primary goal and priority. And so I had a new friend that I met at my birthday party that another friend that I've had for many decades, Mila Moakan, who unfortunately passed a couple of years ago, was a teacher in the journaling workshop process that Ira Progoff developed. So Grace asked me, she said, would you like a roommate? I understand you're going to go see John of God. Would you like a roommate? I said, I'd love a roommate, because I didn't know how I was going to do Portuguese language. I could speak Spanish, but Portuguese, I didn't know how I was going to get around. They don't speak much Spanish in Brazil either. But that was that was a wonderful experience. It's a very interesting chapter. There's a lot of dialogue in it between Grace, who happens to be a psychiatrist in Los Angeles, and she works at the USC Medical Center, and she has a private practice. She's more Jungian oriented in her practice. And so I was really gifted by having somebody very aware. And she wanted to go to Brasilia because she is opening a healing center and spa in Belize. And she's going to be opening in 2023 because COVID delayed her construction and everything. So she wanted to see what these other programs are doing because she's creating this healing center as we speak. And I plan to go there in 2023. That's my trip in 2023. 2022 is going to Santiago, Chile. So it's travel for me is very important. I'll eat beans for days if I have to in order to travel. Because I think there's a lot of growth and excitement and adventure. And I've written stories about some of my travel. My columns for Eastern Group Publications were, in the early days, very much based on my travels to Mexico, my repeated travels to Mexico. So that for me is a real priority. I'd rather go without, I don't go out to restaurants and do all that stuff because I'd rather travel. And, you have to make choices. That's what you do. You make choices to do that which is most important to you.
Exactly, but most of all, I think the book is really about the inner journey that you've taken. You have so many people that you interact with throughout these 11, 12 years that play important parts of your life. But all in all, it's what's inside of you. And the last chapter, the knower behind the mask. And can you tell us a little bit about that?
The knower behind the mask is a term I use because in Vedanta and Hinduism, they talk about the friend, the counselor. They use these other names. They don't use the term God. And there's only one nurturing creative force in the world. It has many names. It's had different, names and descriptions, the Upanishads, Buddhism, Lao Tse, all these different ancient philosophies. Of course, you have Judaism, Christianity, Islam. You have the primal religions, which are the indigenous religions. And each has a different name. I call it God. And, it's been called Jehovah or Yahweh. In Islam, it's called Allah. And the primal religions call it Great Spirit or whatever terminology is given, but there's only one creative nurturing force in the world. I mean, one. And there are many paths to that one. And I think when what I really have been totally aware of in these last years is that we are more than flesh and blood and bones. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And I love the metaphor I came up with about, multi-lane highway, but I'm not going to go into that because that gets too complicated. But we are spiritual beings, and that part of ourselves is something that we can get in touch with and develop and grow. It involves study. It involves the practice of mindfulness. It involves many, many different ways. I mean, you can explore any number of paths, and I've explored many. And I love the entire process of self-awareness and spiritual growth and development. And had I not had the deep faith that I have, that I wrote about in Frijoles, it's all in the Frijoles, that I lived in and through when I was in the hospital, I would not be alive today, Abelardo. And I certainly wouldn't have moved through the point of thriving. I'm not a survivor, I'm a thriver. And had I not had this deep spiritual connection, and I continue to grow it. I continue to read. I continue to study. I continue to pray. I pray a lot during the day. I mean, I'm always talking to God, and it's something we can learn to do. And it's not just reciting prayer. It's feeling it. It's speaking affirmatively about what we wish to manifest and feeling that and declaring that for ourselves, setting the intention of what we're going to create in our lives. And the attention and the intention will guide us to fulfilling and manifesting that which we want to manifest. If we stay focused on negativity and blah, 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 and whining and moaning and all the rest of it, oh, poor me, we're not going to get anywhere. We're just going to continue to suffer and make everybody else suffer with us. And so it is possible. And this idea of the knower behind the mask was a great, I love that chapter. And I did a lot of dialogue with a friend of mine, David Carrasco, who's a professor at the Harvard Divinity School, who I met when I was consulting in Boston back in the early 2000s. And I learned a lot in his class. I really became interested in comparative religion and philosophy during his class in the early 2000s, and I've been reading continuously since then. And so that chapter uses a lot of dialogue to talk about these concepts, which are not easy. How do you talk about what is not seen? We know that electricity works. You flip the switch, the lights go on, the lights go off. And why don't we have the same trust in that unseen, nurturing, creative force for good in the world? So we need to learn how to work with the unseen, how to discover more of that in ourselves, how to develop the capacities to be in touch with that, and to use those principles to heal. There have been many who have taught this. Certainly Jesus Christ was a teacher and taught healing. And there have been many cultures that continue to. The indigenous cultures of the Americas had their own ways of healing. And if you look in my Frijoles book, I was just rereading it, the ancient indigenous poetry and thought was very high-minded. And even the priests who came from Spain, to the Americas, were very impressed by the philosophy, by the religion, by the ideas that these ancient peoples believed and held and celebrated. So there's a lot we can learn by exploring.
No, well, there's a lot in the book. There's a great story that you tell about your journey from the beginning of your blindness to where you're at now, with meeting some fascinating characters along the way. And then you finish up with some poetry that really just add a little extra texture to the spirituality behind the book. So a great way to really spend a couple days. Some people could read through it. Some of the comments that were sent over by people that had previewed the book before said they went through it in one sitting. It's the kind of book that you can go through one sitting because it's just so interesting and so layered with so much going on. With that, we're gonna take we're gonna see who joined us today. we have with us tonight Sandy Romero, where she said,
Oh.
I met Yolanda when I was 15 and just had a baby, and she became my mentor and continues to be my mentor to this day. She is amazing.
Yeah. Hi, Sandy. Thanks for joining us.
We have Mercy Bautista Olvera. Greetings from West Covina, sending you a big hug, Yolanda Nava.
Gracias. Gracias.
And here from Jerry Velasco. Hello, this is Jerry Velasco. Yolanda is a trailblazer and a pioneer in many areas of life, and I admire her straight and love for life. Question, this is a fantastic book to read of Yolanda's new experience. Is she going to have book signing events that we can go to, and how can we help promote the book?
Well, you can tell all of your friends if you received an announcement from me, or you can create your own. You can let them know about the book. It's available on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, wherever books are sold. You can ask your local bookstore. If you have independent bookstores, you can ask them to bring in the book. It's distributed by Ingram Spark. So it's out there, it's available. We need to spread the word. I don't have a publicist. I and my social media, Ray Del Barrio, are it. And but it's doing, events like this and letting people know. But all of you who are watching and listening, when you read the book, you're going to love it. I know you will. And it is a transformative book. That's its intention. And so I need your help. And thank you, Jerry. It's good that you're on. God bless you.
We have Ana Vasquez asking about autograph copies of Through the Dark. Are those available? How could somebody get that?
It depends on where people live. I travel in and out of Los Angeles quite frequently. Barnes and Noble here in the desert is carrying it. They're aware of it. I was on the news here, and so they know about it. And we have to figure that out. I'm willing, if I'm in Los Angeles, especially, to sign books and leave them with the bookstores. If you want to touch base with me, you could call La Plaza and leave me a message, and I think somebody would or pass that on to where you are to Ardo, and I could get that from him perhaps and work out something, because I'm willing to go into the bookstore and sign books and they just keep them there. If there's a, like Romans in Pasadena, would probably do something like that. I haven't set all that up because right now the bookstores haven't been open, but when they're open, I certainly will be doing book events. And so I thank you for asking that. But yes, we could figure out a way of doing that.
Sure. Well, definitely after this, maybe next week, I'll connect you with our La Tienda, our museum gift store, which not only has reopened as well with La Plaza, but we recently opened an online store. So I'll get you. I'll do the connection here.
Okay, because so yes, we had Frijoles at La Plaza, and that is that's right. That's a perfect way to do it, because when I'm in LA, I just go by and I sign the books, and then you ship them out or they pick them up. So that would be easy to do.
We will make that happen. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Sadie Williams. Ana Vasquez, Christine Rodriguez says, hi, Yolanda. I just ordered your 2 books while listening to your story. Abrazos from Christine Rodriguez. So there you go. You got 2 sales right there.
Well, thank you. And think about it as a book for Father's Day and graduation and birthdays. It is something, it really is, it's not because it's me, because it came through me. And I mean, the intention is to help other people. It is a book that everybody can enjoy. This is not limited to any particular group. It's not about blindness. It's about moving through cataclysmic, life-changing, traumatic events, and everybody is going through that at some time or another in their life. So God bless, and thank you for joining in.
All right. Well, I've just put in the comments section of on the chat Yolanda's website, yolandanava.com, where I'm sure you could get all the information of her Instagram and her Facebook and so much other information, which you could learn more about this really incredible woman. So thank you for joining us, Yolanda. I really appreciate you coming on to En Casa con la Plaza the second time. And my question, will there be an audiobook coming up?
I'd love to have an audiobook. At the moment, there's no plan for that from the publisher, but I would love to see an audiobook. And I also have already requested that the Bard Library of Congress Talking Book Program do an audio recording for people who are sight impaired and physically handicapped. And there are a lot of people who are in that position. I use that digital audio service, and I read all of my books. I have a disc cartridge with 38 books on it right now. I'm rereading Isabel Allende, by the way, and just finishing Paula. But yes, at some point it will. I've also have already made the contact to have a Spanish language translation done of the book, which will be ready by 1 year from this time. It'll be translated into Spanish, and it'll be a beautiful translation. And I'm going to present that in Santiago, Chile, in the third week of May in 2021. At 2022. I'm already planning that trip.
Oh, incredible! So you're saving your pennies. You're eating frijoles and
making sure. Frijoles. It's a good thing I make a good pot of frijoles, and my mother taught me how to wash it properly. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Yolanda. This has been really enlightening, enjoyable, entertaining. And so thank you all that joined us today on En Casa con la Plaza. Let me just give you a little bit of taste of what's coming up on our programming next week. As I said, you could come visit La Plaza. We're open now. Make reservations at lapca.org or line up at 12 o'clock. We might be able to fit you in. We, of course, are very COVID safe. Wearing the mask, social distancing, taking temperatures. We have a lot of gallery attendants to help you move along. If you can't come to our into the museum, as I stated, you could just drive by and see the beautiful artwork by Patrick Dominguez. This Sunday, Molcajete Dominguero, which is our very exciting and I mean, tacos. You can buy tacos, jewelry, clothing, books, and much more at this at Latino marketplace. And then next Wednesday, a week from now, Piero Giunti, a photographer who's Italian Mexicano, he's going to be presenting his images. He's been a world-class photographer of a lot of musical acts, and now he's getting into video direction. So I think you're going to enjoy next week's show. If you didn't catch all of today's, or if you want to watch it again, please visit us at our YouTube page at La Plaza LA. We also, of course, keep it on our Facebook page at La Plaza LA, and also at our website, lapca.org. Thank you again to our sponsors, Kaiser Permanente, PepsiCo, and to all of you for supporting La Plaza. And Yolanda, any last words?
Well, I just want to wish everybody their highest and best selves, that they fulfill their own dreams and goals, and that they really look at expanding if they have a spiritual practice, and if not, to develop one, because I think that piece of our life is the most important, and gives us the best results, and it really helps us live into the fullness of life.
Thank you so much. And Dorinda Moreno, who also wrote a little mini review on your book. Congratulations, Yolanda and Abelardo. Great program. Looking forward to all that's coming in your odyssey of life-giving and giving. Comadrismo.
Gracias, Dorita. Gracias.
All right. Well, good night, Yolanda. Good night to all of you out there, and see you soon. And have a great Memorial Day weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.